Hi, Paul and Debbie. Nice to meet you again. I want to discuss your article, Pivot It Like It's Hot, because actually you clearly believe that people need to change the way they think about things, particularly in hospitality, which we'll get into some specific examples. But I guess it's quite hard for people to pivot, isn't it? I think they're getting quite tired of pivoting in some ways. Your thoughts on that? It's challenging people to change. It's always the hardest thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the hardest thing. I think it's a whole new mindset that we all need to adopt. And actually, it isn't really new. I mean, pivoting is central to business anyway. We've always had challenges across all different sectors, and we've had to respond to whatever challenges there have been. But this has obviously been cataclysmic and unprecedented, and no one was really prepared for it. And it's everyone's affected by it. So for us, the interesting thing is that how you respond to what's out there is what's going to either strengthen your brand or going to embolden those that are actually fierce in the pursuit of actually pivoting their business.
Very fair. Cool.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, and clearly the world is moving ever faster, right? So as we have very rapid technological advancement and the convergence even of those technologies, there's no doubt that we're going to be able to keep up with rapid change and leverage everything that's in our disposal, really. Yeah.
And when you're talking to clients, how are you finding they're coping with all this change?
I think it's strange because even one of the potential clients that we're talking to is right at the heart of the whole COVID thing. And even they are finding that even though they've got the perfect offering, their to market isn't actually what it could be and should be. So just because you're part of this whole thing where you have a real opportunity to actually to kind of grow your business, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're not doing it in the right way by being very consumer centric to everything you do, that you will win. So I think our process is really about putting your consumer at the heart of the process so that all business is a little bit more robust in its offering by actually speaking to people first rather than just panic response, but actually being really mindful about that response and checking in with those people that are actually going to be using your product or service.
That's fair, Paul.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly what we're all about. I mean, just to give you maybe a little bit more background, the three of us who started this company, Idea Gym, we come from an ideas business. We've constantly had to come up with new ideas and look at it from a commercial perspective and a strategic perspective, not just a creative perspective. Now, we'd like, our vision when we first started talking about setting up this business was, how can we help business be braver? How can we help them take more brave steps, be more innovative? And that's why we are doing what we're doing now with, offering these essentially design sprints, as you know, to enable that essentially. We'll talk a little bit more about what it is exactly that we do later, but that's the kind of the purpose behind it, really.
Okay, we talk about, obviously in the article, you've obviously done quite a bit of looking at the hospitality sector, hotels and restaurants. And we'll go into the technology piece, which I particularly enjoyed. Can you tell me a bit more about that? But in terms of the hotel piece, obviously people have been looking at co-working spaces, looking at how you adapt rooms. What are your thoughts on, again, how the hotel sector is coping with all this and adapting?
They're playing to their strengths at the moment, I guess, that's also one of the core premises of what we do, is like leverage the strength that you have. So, I mean, they've got real estate that's standing open at the moment. So for them to offer those spaces to key workers, frontline workers, to use them as workspaces, which are basically taking advantage of this whole kind of working from home movement. Hospitality now has got to go further. So I think for me, when I think of hospitality, I always think of the fun part of my life, right? It's the holidays, it's the going out, it's all the great stuff. And actually, we've been impeded quite significantly. So, when you look at the Airbnbs, their business has been curtailed just as much as everybody else in that sector. But what they've done is they've started to then recognize this joyful fact, and put the entertainment back into kind of being at home, if you like, by giving consumers access to really interesting people that they ordinarily might not have access to, but equally giving them access to new experiences. So I think, you know, the working from home or having a space where perhaps, you know, a lot of people are doing homeschooling, which isn't always conducive to every moment of your working life. And there are times when we've got to make really important calls where a child, many children in some cases. So being at home isn't that option. So being able to go to a hotel space and utilize great Wi-Fi, etc., is obviously just there for the taking. Interestingly, we've been working with a wonderful new brand, a startup brand called Unplugged, where they've looked at exactly the flip side of that. We're all spending incredible amount of time, you know, being connected and plugged into all our devices. And what they do is they give you a digital holiday, which is basically a complete digital detox where you check in your phone on arrival to their cabin. If you need to go to the local pub, you have to resort to paper maps. You know, it's back to old school way of doing things. But really with that kind of reframing where some are giving you better Wi-Fi, better access, better connectivity for what you need, others are completely removing us from that. So there's so many wonderful examples of these sorts of pivots in their offering, which have shaped and kind of actually in some places created new businesses.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to build on the Airbnb example. I mean, Airbnb, of course, to them, digital is a bit more in there, is more native to them. But I just saw a partnership that they're doing with a dating app called Hinge. Don't ask me how I know about it. But they're doing a partnership for Valentine's where they're offering Hinge users unique online Valentine experiences that they can experience with their favorite match. And it's just a great example of two companies coming together and finding a beautiful solution at this point in time.
I mean, it's one of the big debates at this moment is about how do you take virtual experiences to another level?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think everyone is, and people talk about being zoomed out, and that's fine. But Zoom's, I think, in virtual here to stay, and that's a reality. But now everyone's exploring virtual dinners, and how do you create something that's very different? So how technology comes through during this period is going to be crucial for those experiences, as you rightly say. And you refer to obviously a couple in your article, don't you? Journey to the Center of the Earth and Party on the Light Side of the Moon. Can you tell me a bit more about those? They sound fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, so those two examples come from a company called the Co-Reality Collective. And what they've been very clever in doing is taking something like Zoom, the backbone of Zoom, and making something quite magical out of it. Magical for the user, because essentially what you're doing is you're going on a journey, choreographed. So you start somewhere, you know, you go through a couple of places, and there's a destination, and so they've got sort of a model for creating these online parties essentially, but they are changing the themes up. So they're putting it in a new dress, which for them means they've sort of got a repeatable model that can quite quickly be adapted. And for the user, it means that, you know, every month you can go to a party, meet strangers safely, because there's a code of conduct and everything, and just have a great time from home and try and escape, from your living room. It requires a bit of a mental leap, but the people who choreograph it, who facilitate it, are very good at bringing you in and making you feel comfortable. And I think that's a great example. There's another example, which is Tomorrowland, which is a very big electronic dance music festival. It's a mouthful. Again, sorry?
A dance musical festival. Is everyone dancing at home?
Everyone's dancing. So essentially what they've done, and so they have a huge festival in Belgium, the country where I'm from originally. And of course, that's been shut down last year. And of course, they saw all their revenues disappear straight away. They've created also online festivals. So they had a festival on New Year's Eve where what they realized, what they were sitting on was a huge global following. And so they could actually bring that huge global following, no longer restricted, those people were no longer restricted by having to travel or having to find the money to travel all the way to Belgium for the festival. They could bring all those people in for a magical festival on New Year's Eve, produced, very well produced with incredible virtual worlds that kind of mimic the mise en scène that they have normally in real life, but also play around with the technology. So to create connections between people. For New Year's Eve, they had set it up in a way so that, of course, it worked with all the time zones. So, the whole thing was functioning based on where you were in the world. The whole setup was unraveling in a way that, of course, it would hit midnight and hit a climax where you were. So I think that's another just beautiful example of a company who's adapted very well and taken technology, not just try and mimic what they did before, but try and find some ways in which they can use the strengths and the features within that technology to create something quite unique, actually.
We'll go on in a couple of minutes and talk about yourselves, because actually this is all relevant, isn't it? Because people have got to think so differently now as we come out, because everyone's now talking about social distancing will last to the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to create almost new experiences, haven't we? And actually, I suppose the challenge is that hasn't really happened yet, has it? You get examples like we're talking about, which are obviously revolutionary in their own way. But overall, people have struggled to adapt, I think, so far, haven't they?
What I actually find surprising is, in my experience, people have been remarkably resilient and have been resourceful. And I think it's gone one of two ways in terms of, on a personal level, it's one or two ways. They talk about it recently in press. You've either been the evolver, the person that has kind of learnt new languages and done new things with the time you have. And then there are the others that have just literally plugged into the box sets because this is the time we're all stuck in. And I think that same mindset permeates probably business as well. There are some businesses that are literally going to close the door, and there are other businesses that are pivoting. So an example in our household, for example, this weekend, we really wanted a pizza, and there's this phenomenal pizza, but it is not, they don't deliver. And it's fascinating that my husband would drive 45 minutes to go and pick up a pizza, bring it home cold and shove it in the oven for the experience of that pizza. But what was interesting is he drove past one of our favorite restaurants near Angel, near Islington. And it's called Trullo, and it's a phenomenal Italian, brilliantly well-cooked, just great meal, but without all the kind of, the flash. It's just great food. And they've had to close, but what they've done is the vape shop next door has disappeared and they've opened a deli. So this is a place that recognizes that we go there for the best ingredients and the best that they can put together in very simple terms. And actually now they've pivoted into a business that sells those ingredients and then guides people through that experience. So I think some are just quick off the mark and recognize that they need to survive. And in order to do so and to be able to open their doors when all this is over, they need to be doing things now. And I think that's just the mindset probably of the owners and the people that are driving the business. And I think it's a kind of mindset that we probably all need to adopt a little bit more.
Now let's talk a bit about yourselves, because again, this will go into the broader conversation. The idea Gym was set up this year in January by yourselves, and you all come from a kind of agency background. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Do you want to just give a bit about your background quickly?
Yeah. So the three of us. So Paul is the strategist. I mean, broadly speaking, we all like to think that we straddle all of these things and sort of keep talking about a metaphorical tripod. Christine, the business brain behind us, and then I am creative director. So all of us kind of meld into different personas, but together, we've all been passionately driving ideas for the longest time. And one of the greatest frustrations, I think, for us as creative strategists, business leads, is ultimately, there are so many ideas that just live in the bottom drawer, right? They never get made. And that is partly what drove this business is we wanted to pivot, we pivoted ourselves, which it kind of enables us to talk about it. But equally, there's a real drive to get more of these brilliant ideas made, and they're often stuck in bureaucracy, time and money pressures that don't enable them to actually be made. So pretty much that was our metric to get started.
And it's also a great time, isn't it? Because we've all got to learn new ideas and pivot. I mean, I have to say, the word pivot's beginning to become one of those words I'm beginning to dread when I hear it. Can we pivot yet again? Really?
A plastic word is what I think they call that. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a bit, yeah. How many times have I got to evolve or reinvent? It is getting quite fun. But there's also kind of a modern reality, isn't it? You look back at the days back in the 90s, it was actually quite quaint because models never changed very much. Mm-hmm. Now they change at a remarkable speed, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Which I suppose gives you a real opportunity.
Yeah, I think the digital or the technological business has driven this fast-paced change. I mean, literally today I've had a notification of my phone software being updated this evening. You know, it's that constant change. And I think we've got used to that constant change in some component parts of our lives, but not necessarily across the board. And now it's touching like education, that's touching every single aspect of our being. And we're having to move along with all of these things depending on the personal pace. But
you're very much in tune with this. How do you educate directors who are probably struggling a bit more with it? How do you do that? How do you bring them along?
I think showing them how the process can work for them, and the main thing is this cost and time dynamic that is a pressure on most businesses right now, right? So how do you allocate your budget and where do you put it toward? And if you can show them that putting your consumer at the heart of that experience, and test it with those consumers. So we build prototypes to show the consumer that they're targeting how that might work. And if it's once we've got those bits, well, we've got quite a profound user testing experience that we then take them through. And once we've got those results, it then informs what the outcome is and whether that idea is a favorable idea, well received, or if there's some amends to that idea that would actually make that idea more robust. Or in fact, if that idea is just a non-starter, but it saves them all that time and money, which normally goes to these development cycles take a long time. And in this current fast-paced world, by the time you've gone through your development cycle, you probably have to change up again. So this is where we're trying to expedite that whole process to get them there quicker, and we can demonstrate that. So this is a proven methodology that was founded by a guy called Jake Knapp, who was really driving this process through the likes of Google. And so there's perfect science behind it. So it's tried and trusted as a methodology.
Cool.
It's exactly that. And I think, it's sort of a perfect middle ground between, going out with a product very quickly and not validating it, or taking 6 months or a year's time to do a lot of development, a lot of research, and then going out with it when it's too late. So what it is essentially is what we're offering is a 4-day workshop that really radically changes how we tackle problems or seize opportunities. And it has components of strategy, has components of creativity, has components of research, of behavior change, all beautifully worked into a very tightly run 4 days, actually. We move very fast. The word sprint is there for a reason. We move very fast. And it's all about coming up with a beautiful new concept. So it starts with, of course, making sure you solve against the right problem. Because that's where often companies make the first mistake is they'll develop a solution against the wrong problem. So let's first explore in a very divergent way what exactly the problem is. And we do that by bringing in also a very multidisciplinary team from the client side. So people who wear different hats from a sales perspective to a marketing perspective, R&D, you name it. We want all those people from the company involved to really think about the problem in a divergent and, of course, convergent way. Decide on what the problem is we want to solve. And then again, start looking at solutions in a divergent and convergent way. So really explore solutions, land on a solution, prototype, do rapid prototyping, we build a model, and then test it with their actual target audience and get actionable insights and an implementation plan as to how they should be putting out this new product or service or campaign for that matter, because it can be used for campaigns as well. And so it's all in a matter of a week's time. We actually get you equipped with strong, actionable insight, essentially, so as to eliminate that risk.
And how do you see
if you don't do that?
Yeah. And how do you see the changes going on? Because we're publishing a piece this afternoon, which comes from research that came out last week that says most board directors, people my age, have about 25% short on our learnings to be really competent now. So we may be competent at running business, but actually things are moving on so fast, we've probably got a lifespan as a chief executive or leader or founder or whatever, is getting shorter and shorter. At the same time, there's a big debate about the people who are working from home and the ones who see it as a right to work from home now, rather than be part of the community. And then you've also got the Gen Z, so actually really research showing they're desperate to get back to offices and start interacting again. So there's going to be all kinds of tensions in the system, aren't there, as we start getting offices and work going again.
I think diversity is probably the answer to everything, because much to what Paul was saying about wearing different hats, so if we're going to solve a problem for a particular business, we'd want to bring people in from different departments in their organization so that they can bring a fresh view on the problem, a new perspective, which might not have been considered before, because these are people that are normally hidden away in the organization. I think in order for us all to survive, we need to bring, it's the same is true of advertising, where we started from, you'd get the brilliant ideas from the young guys because they are kind of finger on the pulse of the new emerging technologies, but also what's happening, what's trending, etc. But then you've got the experience, as you're saying, of the CEOs and the older generation. We need that experience and we need the combination of both. And I think the more we can start to integrate across all sectors, across all disciplines, across all biases, bring in people with mental diversity, the diversity in the full spectrum of the word, then I think we become more robust as a business, all of us. And I think that's back to Idea Gym. I think the fact that we are three very different people from three very different, none of us are British, unfortunately, we're not plugged into the UK as such, but we bring perspectives from our backgrounds as much as our experience here. And that, I think in business, I think that's going to be, it should be more than that buzzword. It should be something we all actually aspire to, is that diversity across everything.
Yeah, again, it's something we talk about a lot. The skills are changing. It's all about listening now as well, which is what you're saying, is how much is missed with the good ideas within a business. Is that right? Yeah. I mean, so often, and that's another beauty of what it is we bring, is the whole process. We create anonymity. So we give you an avatar, if you like, and people don't know who's who. So it enables everyone to have the same powerful voice, because often what happens is, we all know in boardrooms, etc., what the pecking order is, and therefore you behave accordingly. And one person might always have the loudest voice. We see this in focus groups as well, and they dominate the whole scenario. So what's great for us is everyone in our process has the same power, except we give one decider the ultimate power to select things, because ultimately, if you've got a particular focus, you want the focus to have someone who's going to be answerable to the business upward, leading that story upward in the food chain. But for us, that's the thing, is getting everyone heard. And as you say, it's about listening. Paul?
No, I think it's exactly that. It's about listening. It's about a more fluid exchange. It's about empathy, which is perhaps a word that gets chucked around a lot, but ultimately it's understanding people better, right? And whether that's the people inside your organization or outside of your organization, your consumers, your users, whatever you call them, that's what it all comes back to. And if we can be better at understanding people's needs, we can probably develop better solutions and make a real impact, make a real change. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Look, thank you for your time today. It's been fascinating talking to you, and I very much enjoyed the article, which we'll obviously publish alongside us. So thank you so much indeed.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Cheers.
Take care.